Hey everybody, in today's episode, it's myself and Benjamin B. Couple things. One, I want to tell you about something that we're starting on January 6th. It's a big book study and it's for everybody, parents, loved ones, people that need to better understand what the big book has to offer. This is going to be an absolute great resource for everybody. It starts on January 6th, 5 p.m. Eastern. It's going to be every single Monday moving forward. Eric's going to be breaking down the book line by line, so you don't want to miss that. Go to realrecoverytalk.com/big book study to register for it. Now, in this episode, we're talking a line out of the big book, resentment, why it is so important to understand resentment and how it can ultimately cause people to relapse. We give you some takeaways on how to not get resentful. And then we get into a couple of articles that we found on the good old interwebs, one of those being this new trend on TikTok called chroming. Keep an eye on your children. They could be huffing gold spray paint. I mean, I know this has been a thing in the past. You know, full transparency, Ben and I have taken we've had our experiences with huffing, but it's becoming very popular. We're also talking about ADHD medication, Adderall in particular, and some of the ramifications that's coming from that. We're talking about overdose have actually gone on the decline, down 3%. First time in 5 years, pretty interesting. And San Francisco potentially could be tying drug tests to a welfare check. Pretty interesting. We cover all that and more. Enjoy the show. Here we are, Real Recovery Talk. I am your host, Tom Conrad. In today's episode, we've got Benjamin B.
What's happening, everyone?
First things first, thank you for tuning in on the podcast app, whichever one that you choose to use, and thank you for watching on YouTube. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you could always reach us, info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message, right, Ben?
Yes, sir.
How's your voice?
It's raspy on this Flannel Friday, Tom.
Flannel Friday here in South Florida. It is currently 63 degrees outside. So,
it's the coldest day of the year.
Yes, it's the coldest day of the year so far.
You know what's good about that?
Well, that wouldn't be true.
Well, as historically this year,
Yeah.
thus far. You know what's nice about that?
What?
My fear of hurricanes drops drastically.
Yeah, that's true. You know, it's
Because it's not over yet, right? Hurricane season?
November 30th.
Yeah, a few more days.
So, fun fact, there has been a hurricane every month of the year throughout history. So, it is possible to get a hurricane in January, February. Yep.
You mean in Florida or throughout the world?
I'm not quite sure.
Well, they have cyclones on the other hemisphere.
I'm not quite sure.
They're the opposite of us.
So anyways, we wanted to come on today, and we have a passage out of the big book, and we're trying to sprinkle these in a little bit more. We're trying to do this once a week because one thing that I've noticed over the years is that a lot of times when people hear Alcoholics Anonymous, in particular the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous, they automatically associate that to alcoholics. And in my opinion, I think that it is open to everybody. Family members, loved ones, they could benefit greatly if they understood the context of the big book. Do you agree?
1,000%. I think it's the number one piece of literature in all of addiction.
Yeah.
All encompassing. I should touch on Tom and I went to school. I will tell we had a professor that he was working on his doctorate. This guy was in recovery. Brilliant dude. He was amazing. He was probably my favorite professor the whole time. But he's teaching us different modalities of treatment, and him and I had a lot of open dialogue because he knew I knew the big book very well at that point. And he would point out to me like how different portions of the steps related to different modalities, for instance, cognitive behavioral therapy, DBT. He's like, look, dude, the big book pretty much covers it all. The universities just don't want to admit it.
Yeah.
And obviously you got to get it into pharmacology and stuff like that to understand drugs in the body and physiologically. But as far as for what we're doing and probably what parents need, if they understood the big book, they'd be light years ahead. And I should mention, there's a chapter in here called Family Afterward. Two Wives, there's another chapter, like
to the employer.
So people don't realize those chapters are in here. But I wouldn't just focus on those. I would understand the whole thing.
Yeah. And fun fact that I learned from Eric, the Library of Congress has the 88 books that transformed America, and the Big Book is one of those 88 books.
And it's the second most printed book in the entire world, only second to the King James Bible, King James version of the Bible.
Really?
Yep. There's more copies of this.
So I do want to share something. On January 6th, we are going to be starting a Big Book deep dive into the Big Book. And basically what this is going to consist of, it's going to be live every Monday starting January 6th. Eric is going to be the guy facilitating this. I will be a part of this. Ben will be a part of it every now and again, but this is really Eric's thing. And the reason that we're doing this is because people should understand the context of the Big Book. And I can't think of any better person than Eric to break down the Big Book. So basically what he's going to be doing every Monday, starting January 6th at 5 p.m. Eastern time, we're going live, and he's going to go line by line through the Big Book and break it down. And the reason is this book was written in 1939. It's written in old times. So sometimes you could pick this book up and read it and not really understand it because it's written in older times. Eric does a phenomenal job at breaking it down, what it means, and really putting a spin on it to be relevant to 2024. So again, that's January 6th, every Monday at 5 p.m. Eastern. And the way that it's going to work, 30 minutes, he's going to break down the book. He's going to, share with people what this means, what this means, what this means. And then the second half hour is going to be Q&A. Okay. So if this is something that you're interested in, which I highly encourage that you get involved in this, you have to register for it, and you can go to realrecoverytalk.com/bigbookstudy, realrecoverytalk.com/bigbookstudy, and register for it there. Again, January 6th, 5 p.m. Eastern.
I'll throw this out there too. It's not like a sanctioned AA meeting or anything like that. This is just Eric's take on his experience going through the Big Book. But just to kind of blow it up a little bit, Eric does run a Big Book study. He chairs it on Thursday nights. I'll leave it anonymous where and all that. But literally that meeting started 3-4 months ago. There's literally standing room only in that meeting. It's packed.
Yeah, that's over 100 people.
That's how good Eric is at breaking this thing down. I highly, highly, highly recommend.
Yeah. Especially for family members, loved ones. If you want to have a better understanding of addiction, of alcoholism, you need to get in there. Definitely. So realrecoverytalk.com/bigbookstudy to register. Hey everybody, my name's Tom Conrad.
And I'm Ben Bueno.
And we want to take this opportunity to invite you into
the Sobriety Network.
So stupid. What is this consist of? This is on Facebook. This is a Facebook group that we put together. We welcome anybody that has been affected by addiction in any capacity, whether you're a family member or a loved one that knows somebody that's been affected by addiction, or you yourself are in recovery. We want to welcome you there.
Yeah, we want it to be a place where people can get support, ask questions. Let's just call it what it is. If you've been through treatment, that's only a short period of time of your life. You can't possibly cover everything. Sitting in an hour-long meeting or getting with your sponsor, you might not be able to cover certain topics. Recovery just covers so many different aspects. If there's anything that you have questions about, topics that you want to hear on, we're here to share on that. And also, the other people in the group are there to share their experience too. There's some wonderful people that have joined this group that give amazing feedback, have awesome experience, strength, and hope.
So you can go to Facebook and just type in the Sobriety Network, click join, answer a couple questions, and we're excited to see you inside. Right, what do you got in there, Ben, that you wanted to bring up?
Yeah, so I wanted to just read one quick line.
Yep.
Resentment is the number one offender. Let me read a little more.
Okay.
It destroys more alcoholics than anything else. From it stem all forms of spiritual disease, for we have been not only mentally and physically ill, we have been spiritually sick. I always point out when I'm taking my sponsees through this, it says resentment is the number one offender. It's not the only offender, but I love breaking down why it's the number one. Do you know what a resentment is, Tom?
What? Well, I mean, I have my own kind of what I think it is.
Yeah, a lot of people jump to like, oh, something you're angry at. But if you actually break down the word in itself to its Latin root, sentiment means feel. If you put re in front of it, it means to re-feel. So like when the world wrongs you, because there are jerks in the world, people will do you wrong. Let's not pretend like that's not a thing. It's one of those things where it hurts the first time, you're angry about it, but what makes it a resentment and not just angry in the moment is that you take it home with you. You ruminate on it. You replay it in your head over and over. You lose sleep over it. You not game plan, but I'll sit, like for instance, when I have resentment, I'll go home at night and I'll be laying in bed. Well, I'm going to tell them this and tell them that, and I'm going to show them, and here's what I'm going to do to prove it. And it just takes up so much space in your head that you're literally losing quality time between your ears. There's no peace. You sit in that long enough. What's the one thing that easily brings a drug addict and alcoholic peace?
Drugs and alcohol.
Taking a drink.
Yeah.
Taking a shot of dope, whatever the case is. So I like people to understand what resentment means. A really easy analogy that I always go over, and I think we talked about this when we did our big book study kind of thing. We didn't do a big book study. We did more of a step study. We didn't read through it line by line like Eric is. But if you watch, for instance, a UFC fight on pay-per-view, you see a guy get hit and knocked out. It's quick. It's fast. It looked like it hurt. Pay-per-view has an instant replay machine. They instant replay it, but they also have all the effects. They do it in slow motion. They got different camera angles. So it looks worse and worse and becomes worse as time goes on. Every time we look at a different angle, now you see the tooth flying out that you didn't see before in real time. Now you're playing it back in slow motion and you see his face jiggle around and tooth goes flying and sweat beads flying off. You didn't see all that the first time. But when you ruminate on something, it starts taking up more space in your head. It looks more painful. You perceive it as more painful. And then what do? We turn on that I'm going to get even machine.
So what is in terms of resentment, what is the solution to it?
Doing a 4-step. I think that's a perfect thing to leave up to Eric's breakdown when you get to that part.
Doing a 4-step is part of the 12 steps in Alcoholics Anonymous. And it's, yeah, I mean, we've seen this play out time and time again with people and even myself. I've never picked up over a resentment. I've never drank over a resentment, but it has rented a lot of space in my mind and it has kind of taken over in certain instances. You know, and I can get resentful, you know, at anything.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but you say you didn't drink out of resentment, not in recovery. You're a one-chip wonder.
Right.
But back when you were drinking, you never left work and like drank with a determination because something went wrong that day.
Oh, all the time, yeah.
Chewed you out. Or when you were selling cars, someone pissed you off, so you were even more driven to get to the bar and take a drink.
Well, yeah, or the person didn't buy the car at the end of the day, you know? I'm sitting there at, you know, an hour after we're closed and they didn't buy the car because they were going to go down the street and buy it for $100 cheaper. Yeah, for sure.
I mean, so back then you drank out of resentment too. And justification.
Yeah, so it's something that you really have to be weary of. You have to be, and listen, parents and loved ones and family members, this goes for you too. Now, you may not turn around and chug a bottle of whiskey out of resentment, but it will cause you to act a certain sort of way.
You know what a good example is? Dude, we have a client here now. And the mother, and they just don't know, dude. But she brought up, and because I was sitting with the therapist and we were having kind of like what the client wasn't there. It was an initial phone call. The mom had some concerns, wanted to talk to Nicole and I. Nicole is our clinical director. And the mom was going on and on. It was about a 45-minute phone call. And the mom said, I want to know back in 2019 why he did such and such, and I want an apology for it. I'm like, dude, it's 2024, and this is still weighing on you? Like, don't sit around waiting for an amends. I tell my sponsees that, like, did you have the right to be angry? But dude, if you're holding on to that 5 years later, that's on you. And again, like, I get where she's coming from. It's upsetting. People want answers. People want to feel, like they've gotten some sort of apology or amends back. But that's why families also need to go through this process.
Yeah.
I mean, your kid's trying to get better, and you're worried about something that happened in 2019. And it was something like obscure too, like stole out of a wallet or something. I'm like, bro.
Yeah, really. I mean, it's something that you gotta. It's a family disease, it affects the family in ways that you may not realize, and all the more important why you need to be a part of this big book study on starting January 6th.
Yeah, if your kid has robbed you 20 times in the last year because of their addiction, guess what? You played a part.
Yeah. So we got some news that we pulled up, which I thought was pretty interesting. And Ben, tell me about this TikTok, this huffing. What do they call it? Chroming?
Yeah. So full transparency, I jumped on Google. I was like, just out of curiosity, I'm like, I wonder what the world has to say about what's happening in substance abuse today. Gave me a bunch of list of articles, short ones to click on. So I'm not going to go into crazy detail, but it was talking about how chroming is a new TikTok trend, which is the equivalent to huffing, whether that's gasoline, permanent markers, spray paint, duster, inhalants is what I should be saying. But, I was thinking about it. Why would this be interesting to talk about? Because this stuff happened when you were a kid, right?
Yeah.
I mean, I remember kids doing it in high school, but I feel like they were isolated incidents. And I feel like in the substance abuse world today, because I wanted to put like our perspective on it. The kids have social media nowadays. There was no TikTok. And what used to be isolated incidents, oh, Johnny Freak over there snorting nail polish all day in English class, like, has now become trendy because he has a TikTok, right? And I just think it's something to be aware of, where kids are just exposed to so much, man. Even my 6-year-old, like, I'm picking up on, like, the things he's saying, the things coming out of his mouth because of YouTube, even Disney and Netflix and all, like, they have little things in there that I'm like,
It's crazy. Remember the Tide Pod challenge?
Dude. Yeah. So, you know what? I'll throw this out there. People are probably like, why chroming? I'll throw it out there if you're ever interested in doing inhalants. The metallic color spray paint is the best. Apparently, gold and silver are the ones to go with.
We're not endorsing huffing by any means.
No, that was just a little fun fact.
Yeah. It's scary. I mean, I do not, I mean, my kids are only 8, 6, and 5, so, they're not on social media yet, but I'm kicking that can down the road as long as possible.
You know what the other thing is too, dude? And I don't know if this is good or bad, overexposure, underexposure, because I'll bring up Kai, my 6-year-old, for instance. He comes home and he's like, Dad, vaping is drugs. I'm like, a 6-year-old knows what drugs are because the school is pushing not vaping. You know what I'm saying? So in his case, as an individual, yes, right now he's saying vaping's bad, but it's also exposed him to, he's talking about drugs at 6 years old.
Yeah.
I think the intention is good. And I don't know if there's a right or wrong, man. It's hard to say. Like, whether you learned about it at 6 years old or not is not going to determine whether or not you end up a junkie, but you can't help but sit there and ponder.
Yeah. No, definitely. I don't know. I mean, I don't shy away from those conversations in front of my kids. I know that. They know about the podcast. They know about, they hear me on the phone all the time talking to people, so.
Yeah.
What's this about ADHD? Scripts increased significantly in the last few years.
Ooh, this one jumped out to me because this one, dude, pushes my buttons big time. So prescriptions for ADHD meds, such as Adderall, that have increased significantly since probably COVID 2020. And they're saying that if you are on a high dose of an ADHD med, there's a 63% increase of going into psychosis or mania. That's pretty high, dude. And just to clarify what they considered a high dose, they considered a high dose 40 milligrams of Adderall. You know how many pre-screens I do for our clients that come in here that are on 40 milligrams of Adderall?
Quite a few.
Quite a few. And I just got to shake my head, man. Like, what is wrong with these doctors? And just to throw it out there, Adderall is only one carbon molecule different than methamphetamine. Like, so you got meth, you got Adderall. They're essentially, in my book, very close to the same thing. Meth's a little more euphoric, but they're essentially the same thing, dude. They're going to have the same toll on the body if you're taking them in high doses. Well, you should do meth or Adderall, I guess. Let me process this. But the other thing is, too, is like something that really ticks me off about the COVID times, because we saw this with treatment, too. The readily availableness of, is that a word, availableness? Readily availability of.
Readily available.
Yeah, of getting prescriptions online because you couldn't go to doctor's offices. Like we saw this in treatment. They lessened the requirements for telehealth. All of a sudden you could go do it from different states. Like a lot of times, like if you were doing telehealth, for instance, like a Florida practitioner could only do telehealth for Florida people. They opened it all up. Next thing you know, I'm seeing prescriptions being written for everything and anything. It's a quick buck for the doctors, dude. Like, hey, let me jump on this telehealth call for 30 seconds, write you a script to Xanax or Adderall or whatever the case may be. I think we saw a major increase in pharmaceuticals, narcotics, going up because of that. I'm just going to call it what it is. Doctors, whether consciously or unconsciously, oh, there's more business for me. It's easier, less resources. You don't even need an office staff. You just jump on your Zoom and bloop.
Yeah, it definitely lowered the bar, and it did not help the overall cause. That's for sure. Well, there's good doctors out there, but definitely some bad players.
Well, we saw it even with the treatment space too, because let's call it what it is. All of a sudden, we saw all these big treatment center conglomerates. These are the big corporate ones that, in my opinion, are just puppy mills. They're all of a sudden we're offering telehealth. We're offering telehealth. They would drop their in-person programs or not push them as hard because they don't have to provide any overhead. And all of a sudden, you're seeing this push for telehealth. These people ain't staying sober doing an online IOP. There was one in Fort Lauderdale that I knew of where about 30 people, that was their census, were going into these telehealth groups, which the insurance was paying for. And literally, like, from what I was hearing from somebody that actually worked there for a little bit and ended up quitting, they were frontline staff, they were seeing that on the computer, the majority of the clients were like logging in, and they weren't even there listening.
Right.
Like, I'm like, dude, it just doesn't work.
I do think that there's a time and place for online treatment for sure. But not when insurance is paying for it. And I've thought about this, and this is actually potentially in the cards for us in the future, of offering some form of, and I don't even want to call it treatment, but I would call it maybe like some sort of program or something that I would like for us to offer people through the podcast, to get help with their alcoholism or their addictions. That's something that we do want to do sometime in the future, because not everybody has the resources to be able to come here. And I do think that people can be successful via online, but not if the insurance is, sometimes if the insurance is paying for it, but it really falls on, who the client is. I would want, people to pay out of pocket. If you're going to pay out of pocket, you feel that more.
You're more invested.
You're more invested. It's something that you're going to take advantage of. And, not to mention, the podcast in and of itself is credibility. We know what we're doing. If you just go to some sort of podunk online IOP program and you don't know anybody, it just doesn't, it's kind of icky, but I think that it can be done.
To your point, it's up to providers to also be professional enough to say to someone, hey, that you probably need more.
Right.
Yeah. Because, for instance, the therapists are so proud of me, Tom. On Monday, I have an appointment with the therapist.
Oh, good.
Yeah. But somebody in my case, dude, because this lady offers in-person and Zoom, I opted to go in person. Maybe after I meet her and stuff, I can just do on Zoom. But there's a difference between someone like me who's just looking for a therapist versus someone that's potentially in a life or death situation. You're like, oh, just do online telehealth. So the provider has to be professional about it and have ethics.
Yeah. There's a couple more I want to cover before we wrap this up. U.S. drug overdose deaths declined for the first time in 5 years, 3% decrease. That's interesting.
Yeah, and that I should state that wasn't like across the board. With some cities had increases, but the overall for the entire U.S. it's down 3%, which and we've talked about this in the past, but I just really want to hit it home because it also affects other substances going up. I think alcohol is making a big comeback in treatment. We've seen more alcoholics lately, right?
Yeah.
We've seen less fentanyl addicts. And I grew up in the doctor shopping Oxycontin when Oxycontin first came out. Like I was on those, getting them mad cheap. But now that the whole pill epidemic is done, people aren't just like jumping straight into fentanyl and xylazine and these quote unquote zombie drugs. Our generation had like an on-ramp. Do these pharmaceutical pain pills, the Vicodins, the Percocets, the Oxys, the Roxys. Now that those are being more regulated and hard to get because doctors went to prison, now what's left is this generation, the ones that are still alive are the ones that are on the fentanyl because all the pills dried up. So I think that there's a definite correlation where people aren't just like, if I'm 15-year-old in high school, Ben, like,
not going to go straight to fentanyl.
Less likely.
Right.
I probably would have, but less likely, we should say.
Yeah.
More teens wouldn't, because it's scary what they see on the news. Fentanyl, dude, the car fentanyl.
Yeah, it's very risky. And I think, people are starting to wise up a little bit. And, but there's also multiple factors that play into that. What's your family life look like? Even though you may be 15, but your parents are in their 30s or 40s and they're banging heroin and stuff like that, you may be more inclined to go down that path. But overall, great stat, 3% decrease.
Yeah, I'm 1,000% confident that my theory is correct. The on-ramp to the opiates is gone.
Yeah, I hope you're right. Last one, San Francisco ties tough love to getting welfare. Wait, what is it? San Francisco
tries.
Your handwriting is terrible.
Well, I was at the bottom of the whiteboard at an angle. I didn't kneel down.
Oh, half measures availed us nothing, Ben.
You see how at the top it's easier to read and then it gets worse?
Okay, so you read the bottom.
San Francisco tries tough love by tying welfare to drug rehab. If you read the article, it was a short one. It went into a little bit of detail, but San Francisco in particular is going to start drug testing people on welfare.
I don't believe that one bit.
Yeah, I don't know. I just was interested in the topic as a whole because they tried to do this in Florida and they deemed it unconstitutional. This was like 15 years ago, maybe. My time clock might be off. But basically they were saying this was when Rick Scott was governor. They were saying you had to go get a drug test to be able to get your welfare check. I don't necessarily disagree with that.
Hell no, I don't disagree with that.
Why don't you? I want your take.
You should, if you're going to be leeching off of government benefits, you shouldn't be addicted to drugs, because chances are you're using the welfare benefit for drugs.
I agree with you 100%. And this just goes back to the basic principles of what we teach, even like on the family level of them trying to get a loved one help. The more comfortable you're making their addiction, the less likely they are to get sober.
Yeah.
Man, you give me, because so it broke it down. My numbers might be a little off because I'm going off of memory. But if you were a single adult male in San Francisco, you were only getting $109 a month. If you had an address, they were giving you $719 a month. So give me $719 a month, and I'm addicted to fentanyl, dude. Guess where that 719's going? In my arm.
Yeah. You know, I would be on board with something like, you know, go to rehab. So part of the welfare program can be like, look, we're going to put you in a 90, 120-day program. You have to complete that program. We're going to monitor the drug testing throughout the program. We're going to monitor your clinical progress through the program. You're going to be assigned a caseworker. That caseworker is going to be working in conjunction with your primary therapist. And you're going to complete the 90 to 120-day program. And then you're going to transition over to sober living. And throughout this process, let's do some sort of slow drip of welfare program, like resources, right? Once you complete the 120-day program, assuming that you're capable of working, and I know some people aren't, but assuming you're capable of working, you need to go find some sort of job. And it doesn't need to be a full-time job, but it needs to be something. We need to see effort throughout this whole entire time. And again, slow drip. We'll kind of supplement, if you will, the remainder enough to get you by. But at some point in time, you got to come off the nipple is the best way I can put it. Now, for the people that can't work and that are, actually disabled for whatever reason, okay, you complete this 120-day program and look, we'll give you back pay. But we're not going to give you money while you're pissing hot for drugs. Now, if you want to get a year sober underneath your belt, we'll keep track of how much money you could have gotten, and you stay sober for a year, and we can track the actual quality of that sobriety. We have no problem giving you back pay. I think that would be good.
Unless I'm the pessimist. They get that big payday a year later.
Yeah, but you know as
maybe
well as
if they break it up and not do a lump sum.
Yeah. I mean, you see somebody through a year of sobriety.
Yeah, there's a big chance that they're gonna.
Yeah, because think about that. If you get $709 a month, times that by 12. Let's just do some simple math here. 709 times 12 is $8,500. So get a year sober. We'll cut you a check for $8,500. Or rather than cutting you a check, here's what we'll do for the money. We'll pay a year rent at a place, or we'll pay for this. Florida has this program for children, and we're a part of this. It's called the Step Up program. Anybody is eligible for this. If you have children, the government or the state of Florida has a certain amount of money set aside to supplement certain things for children. Money can go towards private school. It can go towards gymnastics. It can go towards sports, anything that really betters the life of the child. So I'll use us as an example. We get roughly about $8,000 per kid per year. And we can utilize that money for anything. So as long as it falls within the criteria, it's not like they just give us the money. We have to submit, so we use some towards gymnastics. We use some towards private school. We use some towards they have a full-on website that you can go on and buy. Like I bought Levi a brand new fishing rod from the money because they want to encourage, outdoor activities, stuff like that. Any sort of learning stuff, all sorts of things fall underneath the criteria of this Step Up program. Do something like that. Get a year sober and you have $8,500 that we can apply towards whatever. Maybe it's a good, for instance, Kayla. We just did an episode with her. You didn't, me and Nicole did, but she went to cosmetology school. I don't know how much that costs, but hey, you want to apply $4,000 towards your school? We'll go ahead and do that. Something like that. I'm 100% on board with this. Giving money out, don't get me started, but that's how we got into this mess to begin with.
Yeah.
People aren't incentivized to get clean, to get sober. It's like, and you know who else falls into this trap are veterans.
I was going to bring it up.
Veterans, it's clockwork. They get, and listen, I'm not saying that veterans don't deserve every last penny that they get, but the vast majority of people don't realize what that does to a veteran in terms of getting clean and sober.
Who has a substance abuse and alcohol issue. Absolutely. And we have a different vantage point for that. I want people to keep in mind, it is literally such a pitfall. How many veterans just go on the rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat, rinse and repeat. And we've talked about this ad nauseum on the podcast, but you got guys retiring from the military at mid-30s, 40 years old. They get a pension check. They got their insurance, TRICARE for life. And what ends up happening is you see them get out of the military from that regimented lifestyle. They're being told where to be, when to be there, they're busy. All of a sudden they're in civilian life, which they don't transition them. And they're like, oh, I got this check coming in on the first of every month. And they just kind of now I can relax. They literally look at it like retirement. And in my opinion, I'm not a veteran, but I think that's where a lot of a mindset go wrong. Oh, I retired. I can enjoy this. The veterans that I see in society that are healthy and successful get out of the military with their retirement, and then they utilize it to go to school, start a new career, build something, move forward. If you look at Sean Ryan, for instance, there's tons of veterans out there that are very well known that talk about this. They're like, I got out and then I moved my focus to something else, where so many of them have I did my work. I'm retired. I'm going to relax. The problem with that is you have no purpose, no meaning in your life. And then they start drinking too much. It's the same story with so many of them.
Well, and to touch on the financial aspect of it, you have guaranteed income every month, year after year, no matter what. And some, I know one guy that was getting close to $4,000 or is getting close to $4,000 a month. Again, for what he went through, deserves every penny of it. The thing that sucks is that he knows when he's getting that money, and clockwork, relapse after relapse after relapse, and then the pain will get great enough and he'll put together 3 to 6 months. And then the thing is, in that 3 to 6 months he's in treatment, you sock away $16,000 because you're not really spending it while you're in rehab. Well, now you got 16 grand that you can go and use.
I want to give a very specific example so people don't think we're just making this stuff up. You'll know who I'm talking about. There's an old client from here. He was here probably 4 years ago. He did come here 3 times, I think, 2 or 3 times. I forget. But I stay in touch with a lot of our clients. They have my cell phone number. They call me up when they're struggling down the road. I always tell them, hey, when you leave here, if you ever need anything, man, give me a shout, even if you just need someone to talk to for a minute. I've been following this guy for probably the last 4 or 5 years. He'll call me when things are hitting the fan. Specifically, he gets $3,200 a month. His drug of choice is crack. He will do this time and time again. The first or whenever he gets his check hits, that $3,200 is gone in 1 week on crack every time. Then he has his insurance card. He checks into another treatment center for 3 weeks. Then he gets that check, $3,200 crack run. Then he's back in a treatment center. But he calls me all the time in crisis mode Ben, I need help. I need this to stop. And you have literally made it impossible for me to help this guy.
Yeah.
I can't help him unless that money stops coming. Like, because this has been going on for years, and he calls me in tears, and it's heartbreaking. And I'm like, so-and-so, you got that check coming, dude. I know what you're going to do with it, and so do you at this point.
Yeah, he has to find some level of motivation outside of, whatever he has been doing. I don't know.
I'll say this too, and again, I want people to know that we're literally seeing this stuff firsthand. I just saw him in person 2 months ago, and at this point, after doing crack the way he's been doing it for the years, he may, mental health wise, have smoked himself into a point where there's no coming back.
Yeah.
Like, he is not the same person. He's talking about the spirits in the universe and the moons aligning and this and that. And like,
which to some
I'm
people,
like,
that's like normal, but we knew him when he was like,
No, this was on like another level, like some schizoaffective stuff going on. Like,
yeah,
he triggered something in his brain where he is not in reality anymore.
Right.
And that was not the case.
Yeah. It's hard to say who do you place blame on,
I mean, initially it's, you can only blame the addict, but again, it frustrates me as someone who takes that phone call and hears this man in pain, knowing that there's no way for me to help him because the system is currently enabling him. Whether he earned that money or not and earn those benefits, because he is an actual combat veteran, like was in combat.
Yeah.
Like, but at this point, it's killing him.
Yeah.
And it's frustrating, dude, to see someone in pain like that.
All right, Ben, your voice has probably had enough.
I know. I think the adrenaline kicked in and the tickle went away. It's probably going to be worse when we hang up.
When we hang up, we're on the phone. Oh, boy. All right. That is it for this episode of Real Recovery Talk. Thank you for tuning in. In the end, if you have any comments, questions, or concerns, you can always reach us. info@realrecoverytalk.com. Again, that's info@realrecoverytalk.com. And ultimately, we want to help you turn your mess into your message. That is it. We will see y'all later.